It is an uphill struggle to maintain a career in this sector if you're from a working class or low socioeconomic background. The impact on my well-being is beginning to be too much. I'm 43, and what it is that impacts my well-being is the financial instability, the constant having to push back against organisations about pay and what my worth is, and then also these unspoken things that go on in the sector, which I feel like, you know, I'm mid-career, I've managed to kind of understand a lot of that stuff and get my head around it. But there's still nonsense that goes on, and it really impacts my well-being when it takes me by surprise or when I'm not fully understanding what's happening. So yeah, that impact on my well-being is too much, and so as a result I am looking at an exit strategy because I deserve a better life than what's being offered to me in the arts. Nonetheless, I am on my way to teach this morning, and I'm really proud that I'm back in my hometown. I've travelled over to Essex. I don't live here anymore. My last feelings of being here was living in a hostel for young homeless people on benefits, not understanding, feeling hopeless and not knowing the way out. And anyway, now here I am teaching, sharing my skills, working with the community, helping or supporting or offering skills for people to feel their potency, people to feel their imagination, and to do that with other people. And that's a powerful tool to have. And I wish that I could continue to do that, but I'm not sure that I can anymore. So please take socioeconomic diversity seriously, take people from working class backgrounds seriously.
While others are spending 3 years on a BA, we tend to spend those years just working to survive. By the time we find some stability, we've often aged out of emerging artist scheme. For an immigrant, that academic route is much more expensive. The international student fee literally tripled than non-student loan. And a decade of professional experience in Japan can feel invisible the moment you landed in the UK. Unless you have perfect LP accent. The industry talks diversity and inclusive, and which I really appreciate, but the only door in is the traditional path. You are excluding very voices that can bring in new perspectives and new audiences. Of course, English is my second language, I know. But if you do understand me now, you know I can tell my story and direction in a rehearsal space.
And I would love to talk for a second about how we value or don't value the working bit of working classness in the working class artist experience in particular. Whilst theatre will make space to platform some narratives around working class experience, that can often reinforce certain stereotypes and ideas of who that experience belongs to. But outside of that, as an artist, I feel as though the only way for me to be accepted or to truly belong to the theatre world is if I follow this narrative myself of somehow surpassing my class. That if you're going to ask me what I've been doing and it's selling cheese or working night shifts at a newspaper or working in a shop or feeding pigeons or applying for JSA or doing whatever it is that keeps the rent paid, that's not valid. And I think the reality for most people right now is that the hustle is pretty tough, like keeping the bills paid, but it's different when your experience of precarity is such that it's like a baseline in your nervous system. I think that when I've been sharing these ideas and I talk about how it feels, that's also really important. We understandably talk about class as a structural experience because it is about the haves and the have-nots, about the geography, about the cultural references, about all the other ways in which we mark class, but we don't often talk about how it lives in the body and how it's an embodied experience. When it is embodied in rooms where you feel like I've said too much, I haven't said enough, I've said the wrong thing, I don't understand these codes, I don't know these systems, there's then a whole other bit of labour where you're going to process that in a certain way. When you're also asked about your future when you're living in certain set of circumstances. The future is the next week, next 3 months, not always the next 10 years. And that's not to say that dreams and ambition don't belong to working class people and don't belong to myself. I have them. But the reality means that sometimes what's forefronted is different. And if it felt like you could really talk about those things when in meetings and in theatre spaces, then the work and the world would hopefully feel a little bit more inclusive for a lot more people.
Surviving and the reality of being a working class artist is that it currently feels like venues are ring fencing working class artists or artists who are not as financially able to take big creative risks out of their application and call out opportunities. I mean, I've seen 3 this year alone requesting to have done a successful 3-week run in a venue. That's just a lot of financial challenge for me, and it's a shame because I know I have every other kind of accreditation or skills and experience in a variety of different ways. For example, I've directed for the past 6 years in drama school and theatre in education environments with adults, and I've created my own work and been successful in Arts Council funding, but for extremely short runs, which were the safer route financially for me. And so it does just feel like every opportunity is just unavailable for somebody who isn't financially able to take a risk anymore, which kind of sucks.
My introduction to theatre, I remember going to watch a pantomime when I think I was about 8 or 9. But my first, what really captivated me was watching the bottom line videos, because they're essentially plays, aren't they? You know, they're closer to plays than stand-up, and the simple sets of that and the 2 characters and watching those over and over and over, that is the real introduction to theatre that ignited something. And also watching when I was about 12 or 13, watching Abigail's Party, the version the BBC did, which again is essentially a play with a limited stage. And those are my introductions to theatre, and yeah, it's been love ever since.
I'm pretty conflicted trying to do this, actually, because although I'm very working class and part of the precariat these days as a freelancer, I'm very conflicted about it. You know, I want to celebrate my life and my background, you know, and make stories about that, toying with lots of ideas that would do that. But I also definitely don't want to do anything that's didactic or presents working class life as in a cut and dried way that doesn't celebrate it. I see a lot of more programming of working class stories. I still don't see enough, in my view, where it's normalised. I think most of us are working class ultimately, and I think audiences probably do want to see more of those stories, but it's got to be a celebration of all the good things that come in those communities, as well as you know, the difficulties and the hardship and the poverty and the precariousness of it. Although I want to celebrate that aspect of my life and working class stories, I don't want to put limits on ambition, and I think that that's something that happens. You know, I still might want to make work that includes talking about Renaissance art, or, you know, I still want to do Shakespeare, I just don't want to play soldiers and servants the whole time. I do worry that an unintended consequence of all of this focus on class and so on is that we end up more in our lanes and less expansive, and that ultimately is possibly counterproductive.